All right. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Is this working? Good morning. Are we good?
This is your Dr. Ota.
Oops.
Look.
Now I'm me.
There you go.
I'm back to me. Okay. This is my favorite thing to do, to talk to kids and teachers who love science and technology. So I don't mind getting up early on a Saturday and coming in, really. And I can tell that you all don't mind it either. First thing I'd like to do, who's the youngest student here? Who thinks they're the youngest student here? Throw out some ages. Who's the youngest? What do we have? A couple sixth graders? Sixth graders? 11. Okay, 11. That's perfect. The reason that I ask that is when I was growing up, I actually was, I went to school in a little town in rural Minnesota. There was no real science and technology available in school. And here is me, age 11. And I'm hacking away on a computer. And at the time, I'm going to date myself, this was an Apple IIe. This computer doesn't really exist anymore except in a museum. But I loved it. And actually, this photo was not taken by my mom. It was taken by a newspaper reporter who put it in the paper. Because at the time, this was really rare. You couldn't work with computers. It was new. And I was so excited about this, and nobody else seemed to be excited about it. So I tried to do these camps, and I tried to go to these things in our little town, and there wasn't much. And eventually, and this is the point behind talking about like why this interest is important to nurture from a young age, I just kept this in mind. Even though I didn't have a lot of resources, I really love science and technology. I focused on it, and I could turn it into a career where you can basically make cool stuff. That's what engineers do. You envision, you dream up interesting things, and you make cool stuff. And when we talk about solving problems in engineering, that actually sounds like, you know, it's a problem, like you wouldn't want to do it. But in fact, problems are interesting. They are challenges. They are things that we want to solve, and they're like puzzles, right? And so I love puzzles, I love games, I love animated films, and I teach video game development and also something called the Internet of Things. So I joined the faculty here in 2016. It's been a fantastic move. There's lots of really interesting people here to work with. And as was mentioned, I run a research group that basically tries to connect people with information, and because everything in your environment today has a computer in it. It's not so sort of aware, it's not completely noticeable, but it's true. So a lot of people believe, who here has done a little bit of computer programming? Hey, fantastic. A lot of people believe incorrectly that computer programming is boring and dry and difficult and not interesting. But I tell you what, computer programming turns you into a maker, because if you can learn how to program, you can create just about anything, and that is a really powerful thing. And you know, computer programming is much more about creative and logical problem solving than it is about syntax and writing weird lines of code. It's actually about much higher level ideas, and that is really cool. So, who here today came in a car? Yeah, me too. Everybody, right? Did you know that that car that you came here in is basically a big rolling computer? It's more than one computer. It's actually lots of computers all talking to each other. In fact, if you look at a car, you have a bunch of things in that car that are run by computers. The engine is run by a computer. The airbags, if you crash, those sensors figure out there's a crash and deploy that airbag to save you. Your steering is coordinated by computers. Your locks are computer controlled and maybe even over the internet. And you know, the brakes, you want those to work. Those are computer controlled. The other thing too is these cars are actually connected to the internet very often. So you know, cell towers, when you're driving by them, sometimes your car is actually talking to those cell towers, and those cell towers are connected to the internet. So you can do a lot of great things, right? You can You can basically send help if cars get into trouble. You can, in the future, like coordinate, like you could create a car that can drive itself. We're already seeing this happen, right? Autonomous vehicles are becoming real, all because they take in data from the environment, they talk to each other over the internet. But you know who else is on the internet, right? You and me on our laptops. Do you think it's possible to actually crash a car over the internet remotely? Well, here's a little video that shows, if I can play it. This car is actually being controlled by somebody over the internet in the living room somewhere else. These two guys created some software that can reach out and control that car. So they can turn on the windshield wipers, or they can steer the car, or they can roll you into a ditch, all because of computer software. Now, clearly that's a problem. And we need you also to figure that out, so if you could, please get on that. Really, computer security is a big deal. But the important point here is that a car is a computer. It's not only a computer, it is a vast collection of computers that control everything from the air conditioning to inner parts of the engine, right? And one thing that is amazing today is that your computer is not the, I'm sorry, your car is not the only computer that you use and you might not know it. You know, you can actually go out, if you want, and hack your own car. So you can go on Amazon and you can buy these robotic car kits. They're super fun. They're not too expensive. And you can program these things to do whatever you want. Some of them, like the one on the top here, has a camera. You can see the videos, so you can spy on your parents, right? Drive the car around, maybe torment your cat a little bit, whatever you want to do. And you know how these run? They basically work through a little tiny credit card sized computer called an Arduino. Anybody heard of an Arduino? Yeah, a few people have. They're little mini computers that are like your big computer, but they're super small. And the cool thing about Arduinos is that you can connect tons of sensors to them, like sensors that tell them, is there something in front of me, or what's the temperature, or are there other cars around? And you can actually program them too to drive in certain ways. And there's lots of really easy ways to program these things. Sometimes even visually, by dragging and dropping blocks of logic onto a little program and pressing play. Sometimes it's just that easy, and all of a sudden your car is zipping across the room. It may do something that you want, or it may do something you don't necessarily want it to do, but all of that is an experiment. And that's what engineering is often about. It's about playing around with ideas, so getting stuck and then figuring out ways to fix the problem, you know, or the challenge, right? In fact, you can take an Arduino and you can do some pretty interesting things. So here is the Bubblestein bubble machine. This is controlled by one of those little Arduinos. It makes no sense, right? It's a bubble blowing machine, but why not? This is fun, right? You can make these sorts of things. You can program them. All it is that little Arduino connected to the fan and the little robotic arm. That's something you can make. Here's another one. This is a guy who created a glove that has a little tiny computer on it, also an Arduino, and it's connected to his drone. So he can like move his hand around, you know, and control stuff in the environment. This is just a home hacker guy, you know. You know, guys and girls can do this as much as they like. You can, you know, convince your parents, get me an Arduino, you know. That's a great gift. Here's one that can solve a Rubik's Cube, right? How's it doing that? It's actually looking at the colors, sensing it using machine learning, and then integrating the solution into this little robotic arm that's solving it. You know, it's just fun. And these sorts of experiments, if you work on these things like this, will lead you amazingly into a career that's also really fun. So here's why. So everything around us today, think about boring stuff like your thermostat or, a smartwatch, or if you do car sharing, which you don't do yet, but you probably will, or like remote control drone helicopters or lights that turn on and off over the network. Or even, if you watch, who doesn't watch Netflix these days? Those devices that play back this content, those are all computers, right? And what's happening is, and this is the exciting bit for you, is that the number of what are called connected devices, so this is all the computers in your environment that are connected to the internet, is growing, and it's growing super fast. So, we're actually going towards 50 billion of these little tiny devices in everything around us really soon. So they're projecting that. So here we're in 2018, we're already up at about 35 billion. We need you all to figure out, what do we do with these things? What do we do with these computers? How do we make lives better using them? And there's a lot of things that have already been done. We're protecting wildlife by putting sensors on them that tell us where endangered species are and how they move and how food and different migration patterns work with them. We have energy that is being made more efficient and cheaper and making cities safer. We're actually even making agriculture better by allowing farmers to figure out the exact right ingredients and chemicals that they need to use on their fields. And we're also being able to do things like monitor bridges. These are all things you don't even see, but they're super important. Making sure that bridges are safe, or that factories work well, or even making cities smarter, like these smart bikes, that actually communicate over the internet and say whether or not they can be unlocked and used. So these are all things that are coming, and it's a super good time to get involved, because you can make the next generation smart bike or video game or whatever it is. And actually, we have a couple courses here at the university that teach these sorts of things. So if you, get involved now in your middle school and in your high school eventually, and you want to keep doing these things, come to us. We have some of this stuff, and you can actually learn here. So we have a course on what's called cyber-physical systems, combining the digital and the physical together and creating something new, like using these little tiny credit card computers. And we do that in class, and then we teach everybody the theory and how to do this, and then we send everybody off and we say, okay, make some cool projects and show it. And at the end of the semester, we have a party, bunch of pizzas, and everybody shows off their work in groups, and it's really fun. I also teach a course on video game development, but it's a special type of course. It's a course that is intended to help you learn how to program, because a lot of students really feel overwhelmed, intimidated by programming. And so what we do is we actually we actually trick you a little bit. We teach you how to make video games, and while you're making them, you just kind of learn to program. So it seems to work pretty well because it's fun, right? So that's another thing that I wanted to mention, is that a lot of these engineering problems are fun. So if you're working on these challenges and you like puzzles and you like figuring things out, engineering is a really interesting way to go. And coming down, and you've probably already seen this, very soon we will have augmented and virtual reality kind of everywhere. Anybody used virtual reality before? Tried it? Yeah, a few people have. It's incredible. So, the idea is that you put a pair of head-mounted display on that is basically putting two computer screens in front of your eyes, and there's a special lens system that creates this virtual environment around you. So, for those who haven't tried it, you can step into worlds that can only be generated on a computer and walk around in it, and it's very realistic. And these sound like games and toys and things like that, but these have really serious applications. For example, here we see NASA. I don't see my cursor here. Oh, there we go. actually uses virtual reality to train their astronauts. Why do they do this? They do it because the simulation provided inside of virtual reality experience is so authentic, so realistic, that you can actually train astronauts to do really complicated maneuvers like on the space station or making a repair in space, and you can practice hundreds, thousands of times in safety before you are in space and it's a life and death situation. You want to have practiced these types of maneuvers again and again. And what they're doing is, by reinforcing your memory systems through repetition, through practice, what you do actually in school too, but being physically present, that gives these astronauts an additional level of safety, and they can really learn how to do these things. And as a last note here, eventually what we want to do is create smart cities where you can take your phone and just point it around at different things in the city and find out information, or have new services, or figure out what the air quality is, and 1,000 other things. So I know I don't have much time today, so I just wanted to give you a brief overview and welcome all of you. I am so happy that you're here, and I hope you have a great day.